Hello, everyone. My name is Richard Baker. I join you from Cambridge, United Kingdom. And firstly, may I say thank you to the Fintech and Financing Conference team for this wonderful event and for extending the opportunity to talk with you today. I'm a technologist and entrepreneur, and today I have the pleasure of representing, as well as serving on the board of TAAL, a Canadian publicly quoted enterprise blockchain infrastructure company. We're building out a transaction processing infrastructure on Bitcoin SV. If I may, I just want to say that I enjoyed a career spanning telecoms, digital media, financial services, and most recently, big data. And it's not that I want to share my resume with you, but I wanted to bounce around these industries as I take on the topic today of exploring transaction processing on blockchain today and what's going on across some of those markets. What are the use cases and what might transaction processing need to look like in the years ahead? Now, as I kick this off, I found myself needing to explore and really come to terms with what do we mean by a transaction and how are we processing it right now? Obviously, the data definition of a transaction is the combination of a message header and payload data. The payload being, of course, the actual data that we want to transmit and receive. The word payload, anecdotally, comes from the traditional transport industry, where one pays for the load to be carried. So, as we look today, many transactions on modern blockchains are transmit and receive messages in the header, along with the data, the payload, which more often than not is effectively the confirmation receipt of a buy-sell order of, say, a cryptocurrency. So this all works pretty well on most blockchains. That said, of course, in the last 4 or 5 years, we've seen significant investment in improving scale, speed, security, and reliability of that infrastructure that underpins transaction processing. And in turn, that reliability has been building trust and adoption across many industries. So I want to look a little bit beyond the payload confirmation receipt that I've just mentioned. So let's go a little bit deeper. So the payload in particular, the message parcel, is really the data value that we're trying to deliver. And of course, this is very different across industries. In media, the payload is going to be a music file or a video file. In a connected car, the payload is telematic data. In a coal mine, the payload is voxel data relating to the size and movement of coal minerals. In a smart city, the payload is broad and diverse in modern times, but it ranges from smart street lighting that have multiple arrays of sensors on them through to electronic road payment systems to multiple types of IoT that are now embedded across cities and towns. What I find exciting about all of these data types is that in every industry, there's a common story. And that story is about seeking understanding of that data, fusing it with other data types, ultimately federating so that you can access and merge data together, query data together. And all of this is in an effort to extract insights and monetize value. And this is the new data economy that we're all enjoying emerging around the world. So I think we're on a journey with transaction types and event information, which I'll touch on a little bit as we explore things today. So increasingly, as we digitize many parts of our human lives, it's becoming clear that we're on the precipice of an explosion in transaction volumes and types of transaction data. So I guess this leads me to question, how will blockchain technology become infused in all of these industries? And how will it become the backbone of the machine-to-machine transaction industry, as well as the human-to-machine transaction industry. There is no doubt that blockchain will need to efficiently enable the create, send, store, and explore value chain of these industries and of these data types if it is to become truly ubiquitous and a common backbone for modern society. So, will a collision of technologies shape the answer of how blockchain becomes so deeply embedded in all of these industries? Well, I guess blockchain's key differentiators, being tamper-proof, decentralization by design, and transparency, do make it a foundational choice now for many enterprises that seek to remove uncertainty associated with ownership, extend evidential control over data, and enable security and transparency. And these characteristics absolutely usher in a new era of building value and collaborating across multiple data types. Let's look at the big data industry. I certainly observed over the last 3 or 4 years that there's a race for many enterprises to transform off legacy enterprise architecture, so where they ran and owned and hosted infrastructure themselves, and there's a move to cloud. But that infrastructure movement is synonymous with one goal, and that is that enterprises seek one data. They're building data lakes, data warehouses, data oceans in an effort to get towards one unified source of data. And of course, those infrastructure bills are now on highly distributed compute and storage, file systems, databases, and analytics engines. So we've already got distributed systems emerging in the modern enterprise. Now, whilst I absolutely recognize that enterprises are breaking down data silos with these migrations, and they're certainly improving access to data, it is not one data. And in particular, it is missing one fundamental characteristic, and that is that it does not have the immutable audit trail of blockchain. Things are on the edge. There's been an explosion of connected devices, or endpoints, as many analysts refer to them as. You know, I think we've neared over 60 billion IoT devices deployed in the last 10 years. These are in B2B markets, but also, of course, in consumer. These IoT devices stream message headers and payload data persistently all day, every day. They are reporting on our smart homes. They report on oil pipeline predictive maintenance, container health and movement on ships, through to, believe it or not, the quality of concrete in a high-rise new building. However, whilst we've seen the first couple of generations of IoT devices, we are entering a new era. And this era is a very sophisticated connected device ecosystem. So with the rise of connected and autonomous vehicles in smart cities, these are data producing environments like never before. They are event-based data producers, but increasingly they are transaction data endpoints. And this is exciting. So to deal with these new hyper-connected markets, as another example, mobile operators are building out 5G infrastructure. And so these are low latency networks. They are ultimately a very different infrastructure. 5G base stations are smaller, pico nano cells, more densely distributed, so only 250 to 300 meters apart in a given urban environment. And the technology design now utilizes compute edge. So we've got in our streets over the next few years, high performance compute and storage in 5G base stations serving low latency connected devices. So let's pause. I'd like to go out. Let's go and explore for a second a day in the life of Smart Richard. We'll head out into Smart Cambridge of the future. Not so far away, I think in the near future, in the next 5 to 15 years, we will see an evolution of city infrastructure and how citizens interact with that infrastructure. So in my example, I envisage taking out my digital wallet. I will walk along and authenticate myself with an autonomous EV sports car of my choice. And I want to head out around the city and enjoy the sunshine in spring. The car will need to be authenticated and approved to operate in the city. So this implies a permission system. So is that the city council that has authenticated and approved those various service providers to operate in the city? That vehicle will also need to be permissioned to interact with city systems, everything from the charging points to no drive zones to toll roads. The car, of course, will also have to authenticate me, and no one really knows yet, but will I have to take a digital one-day insurance policy to be in that autonomous vehicle? Now, of course, whilst I'm in that vehicle, I might want to consume services. Maybe it's my personal music that's by default been enacted when I've authenticated and permissioned myself to be in that vehicle. But it might equally be educational or informative content that I enjoy as I go through that journey. I might not, knowing me. I think ultimately I might choose to elect the high priority fast lane to London and really exceed the speed limit and enjoy the journey. Now, my day out illustration is just to touch on the autonomous machine to machine and machine to human interactions that are taking place to facilitate this experience, to take me on my journey. So let's unpick a few things. Let's look at the role for tokenization in that ecosystem, the role for smart contract flow, the microtransactions that are taking place to permission me in the car and ultimately charge me for the day out experience that I'm about to go on. The authentication services to permission both me and the car with all of the ecosystem service providers. And of course, the interoperability across systems that is going to need to be in place to allow that experience to be fulfilling and seamless. This infrastructure of the future is very different to what we have today. So, my blockchain friends, we have a massive opportunity ahead of us. To support the evolution of digital society, there is no doubt about the beneficial role that blockchain as a technology can bring. However, we need to pay more attention to the payload transaction types that are emerging. The evolution of transaction processing infrastructure is not only about scale to support the growth of decentralized finance, but also now to intercept the machine economy. Blockchain is decentralized by design, so the journey into cloud edge seems logical and needed. Blockchain protocols such as Bitcoin SV perhaps will need to be more deeply embedded in the sophisticated connected devices that I describe in my day out in Cambridge in order to truly unlock the commercial value of the machine economy. So that's my journey through transaction evolutions on blockchain. Thank you for your time. I hope you enjoyed the conversation.